All right. I'm now joined by producer Forrest, as always, when we talk about movies. Jeremy Salmon from the Giving the Mic to the Wrong Person podcast. Our graphic designer, J. Andrew World. And this is Revolution's Jason Myles, who knows the most about this movie. So
everybody subscribe to his stuff, which is now being carried on Zero Books too, which is another common connector, shall we say?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So that is a common connector. So among other things, Andy has done the covers for, I think, several Zero Books titles.
Two at this point.
Two. Okay.
Oh, one's going to come out soon, but one's already out.
Okay, so the Harrington book that's coming out and Against the Web.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
I love that. I love the Against the Web.
Against the Web is dope.
So amazing.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So we just so we're doing this a little bit different than we usually do these. This is so usually we talk about movies and live streams on Wednesdays, but as we're recording this is Saturday night. We just watched Judas and the Black Messiah with patrons on the Discord, and this, people are watching this. You'll probably be watching this on Tuesday, but yeah, we'll trying to think how to set this up. It's fresher, than these things usually are. When I talk about them, usually.
What did you think off the top? What was your overall view of the film?
Yeah, I liked it. I think maybe my sense for the chatter beforehand is that I liked it more than some other people who are here did. I think that the visual style and the music worked really well, and I think that the politics of it. I think that there are legitimate criticisms, but overall, I think we're actually pretty decent. That's my view. You want to go around?
I think there's two things to disconnect. I think there's a look at the Black Panthers and Fred Hampton's politics as they stand, and then there's a view of kind of the FBI and COINTELPRO. I think that as a view of COINTELPRO, it was probably very accurate. As a view of Fred Hampton's politics, it was probably pretty whitewashed.
That's pretty good.
I don't know if that necessarily. I don't know. It sparks a conversation.
That's fair to me. That's fair to me. You don't have to like. Here's the thing. I like Boys in the Hood. I understand the problematic nature of Boys in the Hood. This movie was the new Boys in the Hood for me. It's just we have to have some interesting pieces that kind of explain the politics of Hampton and some of the problems with the film. Like, I like gangster movies, but I know there's a problematic nature with gangster movies. This movie, we know our show was called Is Judas and the Black Messiah Counter-Revolutionary? All right. I think it is.
Okay. I think it isn't. So this will be interesting. But
we're going to have a fight.
Yeah.
Definitely not that.
So, Andy, thoughts?
As a film, it was nicely put together. They set the guns on the table in the first act, and they went off in the third act like a good script's supposed to do. Visually was quite nice. I liked the fact that they had deep cuts of era appropriate music. So, and I'll actually get into that once we actually start talking about the movie.
Mm-hmm.
If I can give my my brief, I think it's astoundingly well shot, just excellent performances, very well put together. It was more than a little bit, I don't know, distracting, or kind of, I don't know what you could call the effect when realizing that every actor in the film was portraying a person who was at least a decade younger in real life than the actor themselves, and at least like all the principles.
And then they didn't do anything to make William O'Neill in the beginning look older, like LaKeith Stanfield. This is, because the murder took place obviously in 1969. So but then that interview was supposed to be shot in 1989.
They slightly changed his hair. They slightly changed his facial hair, and because I remember because when I was in high school, I watched. God, what year? I can't remember. Sometime in the early 90s, I remember watching Eyes on the full week-long Eyes on the Prize. Yeah. Oh yeah, which I thought was excellent. Like, wow, this dumb little like teenage suburban like Neo, like wow, this is an excellent thing, and did not realize the significance of some of the footage they had, or the fact that William O'Neill fucking committed suicide. Somebody believed that
the next day.
Yeah, either the next day or the night of, like just wandering out into not even like death by cop, by death by highway. But it was one of those. It's one of those things where I think much like I don't know, Leslie Lee the Third, other fellow podcaster, has pointed out like how he doesn't necessarily want like Hollywood to put out like relevant left-leaning or covering any sort of like conscious or left-leaning films as like any sort of like relevant or revolutionary message cannot possibly make it through the current studio system, which I think even like Sorry to Bother You needed to get into they needed to get into like allegory to make it through and actually see what he's out about. And but with this film is definitely, I think it's great because if nothing else, you can use I think we can clip this film and use it for like political education nights.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people are gonna start asking, who was Fred Hampton? Because I don't think it was a story that necessarily, that people that aren't versed in history will necessarily always know. So I think that on the political education front, I think that it's a useful film, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. It's Sorry to Bother You. Like I don't think it was very okay. I'm gonna slightly ruin Sorry to Bother You here, but
that's okay. It's 2 years. It's 2 years old. Say the ending if you want to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was gonna say though, like
giant horse stick.
like the explicit like ending is like, oh yeah, and like you're gonna like work on this like union kind of like thing, like I don't think it was I mean, despite the science fiction elements, I don't think they were particularly hiding behind allegory in that movie. I mean, I'd actually, that's interesting. So I don't know. I mean, obviously I saw it in a movie theater. So, I mean, it got pretty wide distribution. I mean,
it got wide distribution, but it wasn't a widely distributed film like some would think. And Boots really had to hustle for the money to get that made and to get people to want to back that film. And they cut a lot of corners. Like I said, they filmed it where I lived. And if I could ever show you guys, when this is all over where I lived, you'd be like, holy shit, they filmed this here. I'm scared to touch the ground here, man.
Have you ever met or talked to Boots Riley?
Yes, I know him. I know him pretty well.
All right.
So was that actually a studio movie or was that like an independent movie?
It's an independent film, and he got some backing.
Yeah,
he got some backing, but you got to really hustle for that. He had been doing. If you go, Drew. If you go look, he had been talking about writing that film maybe like 2 years beforehand. And I remember running into him at a big festival we have out here in the Bay Area called Outside Lands. I ran into him and the guy that produced 21 Grams when he was trying to like hustle up, funding for that film. So, it was a passion project, and I believe it's got him some more that he's supposed to be doing. I haven't seen him since this lockdown. But he was supposed to actually be doing more stuff at the studio that I left. I don't know.
Well, the Sorry to Bother You album that he dropped was 2012.
It came out way beforehand.
Yeah.
The script was the screenplay was published 2011, 2012.
Yeah. So when I look at something like this and Sorry to Bother You, like Sorry to Bother You is not a Hollywood film. There is nothing Hollywood about it. The motherfucker shot it in Oakland. And Boots still, from last I talked to him, he still lived in Oakland. And the first thing I said when I saw this film was, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing to say, that it just is, I said, this is a very Hollywood film.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was very, very Hollywood in the like just stylistically.
Oh yeah,
you know, for sure.
It also clearly was using Sorry to Bother You for leftist cred. I mean, like, because you know, like half the actors from Sorry to Bother You were in it. Like even the one FBI guy, I think was the manager in Sorry to Bother You. Yeah,
like LaKeith Stanfield. Watching this the second time through with you guys, I don't know if you could see me. I was like laying down watching it. I actually saw LaKeith. The reason why I think his performance is amazing, I do think he's going to get an Oscar for this movie. It's very well earned. We saw him literally sacrifice himself for this role. You know, he had to go to therapy afterwards. I'm not saying this to be like funny.
Yeah.
Like, this is not who he is. He did not want to be William O'Neill, and he knew he was going to give William O'Neill so much humanity, because let's keep in mind the real guy, pallbearer at Hampton's funeral, goes on to do this shit for years afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
There was no internal conflict. This is all script.
Yeah, I mean, they do say all, well, they don't say the pallbearer thing, although they should have, because that would have been an amazing detail to put in. I mean, imagine like the scene at the end of this where, you know, where he had to go out and be a pallbearer at the funeral, Jesus. But they do say at the end, you know, that he had that, you know, that he was still doing it for years. I do want to say the one point that's been brought up, you know, I do think is very good criticism is about the casting. I mean, the real Fred Hampton was 20 when he died.
21, yeah.
21 December 1969. So he would have been like 20-ish, barely.
And that's really what like is so amazing about his story in particular, I think, is the fact that he was so young. And I think it was Stokely Carmichael that he introduced at a Black Panther event. Like that was his first foray into organizing. So like, but he was like 19 or 18 when he did that. You know what I mean? Like he was just like this kid that was so amazing at organizing and so well spoken, and like, you know, just in the sense of like he could bring a whole crowd, you know what I mean, like to their feet. And I think that kind of comes through in this, but it's like, you know, it's
different with an older man, because they're bringing a certain level of knowledge and of wisdom that when you see it through the lens of even those old clips of Fred Hampton, for me, it's very fascinating to watch someone at 21 years old, because there's a scene that's not in the film where you hear him say, there's some people that want to talk to you about a credit union. And that's a very famous clip. I think I want to say maybe someone like Michael Brooks or maybe Left Reckoning cut it years ago, a few years ago.
Yeah, TMBS cut it. I remember because I was.
It's a great effing clip where Fred Hampton is like, well, what is this? Where's the education program? You know, you can't just tell me because you're black it's going to work. There's black people all over the world that don't care about black people. For him to have that level of knowledge at 20, I think he was 20 when that conversation happened. You leave that out. And also you have this older man playing a young kid. So it does give you the Messiah mystique, which was a problem that there were a lot of people on the left, like I'll say the black socialists in America. The first thing they said when this trailer came out some time ago was, our fear of this movie is that it truly is going to create Fred Hampton as a messianic character and play into all of the rhetoric that Hoover had at this time. And I think it does.
And I mean, it's pretty heavy-handed with it too. And
but great performances. We can't fucking front on the performances, man. I can't front.
Yeah. I mean, I think that my take on the movie, I mean, having had 5 minutes to think about it before we started doing this, is that like the focus, I think the messianic point is interesting. I have to think more about that, but I mean, I think that the focus is not on the politics, but the politics that you see all seem pretty accurate. like, you like the first thing that you see him do in the first speech is criticize cultural nationalism.
Which was beautiful.
That dashiki scene is
That's beautiful. Ben, you gotta admit that shit was beautiful. That shit. Oh, we fucking love that.
I fucking died laughing when the guy in the actual dashiki gets up and just storms out.
So yeah, there's extremely even more relevance because of what did we see our national elected Democratic figures do? Was it May or June when they put up that photo?
Oh yeah, they were kneeling in the kente cloth.
The kente cloth photo.
Yeah.
We just watched early this morning. I did my stream and we watched. I can't think of the guy's name. Marion Barry. When Marion Barry got arrested, that's what he did when he was going to jail when he was going to court. He put on kente cloth. It's the elixir, man.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why it's almost like we need Pascal here for all these conversations. But he loves the movie, but he has a similar critique where he pushes back against the politics because Pascal actually was mentored by Bruce Dixon, who, as you say, gets a credit at the end of the movie, and being mentored by someone that was actually there during that time frame. And there's also some other Panthers that have mentored Pascal as well. He kind of took a lot of offense to the lack of the Marxist-Leninist message that those guys really wanted to beat into the heads of the people. Right.
And he also was kind of upset about the fact that they didn't have more pushback about Vietnam. There's just a line. Jeremy says to me, he goes, "There's your Vietnam."
Yeah,
they don't really talk about
Vietnam. You mentioned Vietnam at least once in the opening 3, maybe 4 minutes, I think. I can't remember, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a little later than that, but it was just the once, yeah.
And that's the kicker is like so much, and Forrest, you mentioned in the chat during the film is like so much of the film takes place in vacuum. While this is happening, a year earlier, the Tet Offensive happened. The year that this all shit happened, you had that summer you had NASA lands on the moon. Woodstock happens. The Manson family murders happen. The SDS convention, where part of the SDS students for a Democratic Society, where they split and some of them go Maoist and form the Weather Underground. In fact, within the same month,
I mean, there were all. This is we should on this, but they were all. Well, I was just gonna say, I always feel embarrassed when I say this shit because there's way too much of the sort of org chart of the sectarian splits and fusions of the left that's in my head for some stupid reason. But
some of us read comic books. That's what you do.
So it's not that some of them were Maoist. They were all Maoist, just different flavors. So there was the Progressive Labor Party, was one wing of SDS. Those were the people who'd who would make their members go out and get jobs in factories, but then everybody at the factory would think they were cops because they had short hair and they didn't smoke weed. And
they told all their members to no, these are all squares in the factories. You have to cut your hair and not do drugs. And they go into the factories and turns out everybody in the factories had long hair and did drugs. But
exactly. So that was Progressive Labor. So that's one flavor of Maoist. There's the what became the Weathermen, which was a revolutionary youth movement too, which was another flavor of Maoist. I think there was a third one too, and then they had I think they had the big in 1969 because there was a Black Panther. I do not remember off the top of my head which one who spoke at that convention. And everybody got mad at him for being a sexist, but he and there's this a line in one of the I remember one of the memoirs by somebody who's there.
Eldridge Cleaver, maybe?
Oh, I think it could have been Eldridge Cleaver. Yeah,
that sounds like some Eldridge Cleaver shit.
Yeah. Because the line I remember was that they were all like, you know, he said something sexist and they're all like yelling at him for doing that. And the person who the memoir is like, yeah, like I had the strange moment when I realized that the one moment of unity at the convention was when we were all like, yeah, screaming at a black man.
Similarly, two books for y'all to check out in the viewing audience. Check out Max Elbaum's Revolution in the Air. Max Elbaum was both was an active SDS member, I think at Wisconsin maybe, or in Madison, and you know, but also was, and then also the other Zero Books book, I think what was it, Heavy Radicals, that gets into the FBI, a book about getting in the FBI crackdown on this. But I bring him up because Max Elbaum, who has been on several of our shows, and like myself and a couple of people, we interviewed him. Max Elbaum was at that the convention that the Weather Underground did in my hometown of Flint, Michigan.
Oh yeah, the Weather Underground, like what they call it, their war council in Flint. Yeah,
it was within 2 weeks of Hampton's assassination, which like they had speakers like, you know, both reference both his assassination, but also like positively reference a lot of like Manson family shit, like on the stage of this, like real like,
yeah,
like,
well, because
like, you know, like ultra left, like larper middle class schmucks.
Well, which of course, Fred Hampton, right? Like, you know, famously accused them of Custerism, you know, for exactly that. That's
Custeristic.
Yeah, Custeristic, exactly. They
my favorite term.
No, it's beautiful, but yeah, no, like the Weathermen were really prone to that stuff, like because like in one of the things after they went underground, like they like communiques or whatever, they praised like Sirhan, you know, like for you know, killing RFK. And like the Manson thing is particularly bad because what Manson was actually doing, like Manson was incredibly racist, and what he was doing is like he had, like when they killed Sharon Tate, they wrote like pigs on the wall in order to try to get people to blame the Black Panthers for it, as part of his like lunatic idea that this was going to start, you know, the helter-skelter race war.
Well, he wanted to pop up at the end of it and rule over Black people as like the white.
Yeah, exactly.
Like an ethno state.
But then the Weathermen like just obviously didn't know any of that context. They were like, oh, these must have been like radical leftists who did these murders because it said pig on the wall.
Yeah, it's we bring these up because these are all contextual details that are missing from the film. Because of like, again, it's one of those things that, so I can't remember who mentioned it, but somebody mentioned on a recent podcast that a thing to remember about political struggles way back when was that overriding everything was not only the Vietnam War, but also like the fear in the back of everybody's mind of nuclear annihilation, because shit was really like that raw for a long time.
Which I did actually think that was kind of well captured by that line where they're talking about the Hamptons. It's just funny to say it that way, but the
vacation in the Hamptons.
About the Hamptons, not going to the Hamptons, but going to Algeria or Cuba. And they're like, there's a scene where they're debating the merits of those two destinations, and somebody like is talking up why Cuba would be good, and you're like, yeah, I mean, unless this is the week that Nixon decides
to blow it up,
yeah.
And similar to that, that's one of the things we mentioned him before about how like you can't hear Martin Sheen in his modern era like not speak as an Aaron Sorkin political figure, like oh God, I forgot my point. I was going to talk about something about how. Anyway, when did Assata Shakur make a break for Cuba? Does anybody remember?
When they broke her out of prison, I don't remember the year.
I just remember what. But Aaron Sorkin's like Trial of the Chicago 7 film, kind of elides because it's like definite. It was like this deliberate, like, you know, post 2016, 2020 era film that like doesn't really cover the fact that like all the shit that happened during the Chicago, actually brought about the Chicago 7 trial, which is referenced in this film, was because people were protesting the Democratic national convention, because LBJ was in the White House up until January of 1969, and it's not until after that is when Nixon takes over.
Well, which
don't get any of that.
Tricky dicky.
Yeah. To be fair, the last part you definitely get in Trial of Chicago 7, because but the narrative of that movie is when the good, reasonable Democrats were in office, they weren't going to bother prosecuting these people. It's Nixon and Nixon's attorney general coming to office, that meant they were prosecuted, and they retcon like the main prosecutor in Chicago as being this like very conflicted person who doesn't really want to do this, and that's all bullshit. I mean, he was a extremely zealous and fanatical anti-communist guy.
Yeah, it seems to be going that way with Jesse Plemons when
Roy Mitchell is played as this guy. They actually wrote that. That's part of the thing that actually there's an interview with Shaka King talking about that, where they wanted to give some sort of humanity to Roy Mitchell of all people, who didn't have just a snitch. Again, this is filmed like, hey, he just is. He's got a snitch, and he's a man of integrity. He actually said that in a Democracy Now! Interview, that this is just a man with the morals of his time. You know how they write that whole thing. Well, hey, I tried to help you people pretty much with before Mississippi was burning, with the murder of the civil rights leaders.
Yeah, and apparently he was personally involved in that investigation, wasn't he, or something?
Yeah, he was involved. I'm sure he was.
Although the way they played it seemed like the way they played him in the movie was a little ambiguous. Like he does, he does say that he has these moments where he seems a little uncomfortable with Hoover's like just over the top, cartoon villain, level of racism, which by the way was really funny, to Jeremy's point, because because you can't not hear him as President Bartlett from the West Wing, and President Bartlett is always saying reassuring, comforting liberal pablum, and the in this movie, he's and
if you're having trouble with President Bartlett in this movie, wait until you see the Dead Zone.
Yeah, Greg.
Oh, that's a good movie.
It's a great movie.
That's a good movie.
But yeah. If you got this issue,
that's a movie Ben Burgis should review.
Yeah.
If you're not you might not like Stephen King.
No, I love Stephen King. I've actually read the book, but I haven't watched the movie yet. It's on the list, but we should do that.
Sorry, just holding up for those in the audience who want to find out more. If you in the audience would like to find out more, ask your Library of Congress about the Black Panther Speak, put up by Haymarket Books, edited by Philip S. Foner.
Wait, so also keep in mind, they don't talk to the lawyers at all. That was one of the questions we asked the lawyers. We're like, hey, are you guys, just kind of jokingly, are you guys portrayed in the movie? They're like, no. And so I was like, oh, really? Like, they never talked to you? He goes, no, they didn't talk to us. Now, keep in mind, one of these lawyers literally writes, say again?
They brushed over that whole arrest.
They brush over the arrest, and they kind of brush over those guys' time there. They were really doing big time work there, and they mention them kind of in passing a little bit. And again, they never spoke with anybody in regards to this film. And one of them, I think it's Jeffrey Haas, wrote a book about Fred Hampton.
Yeah.
And this whole assassination. So it's not like they were just lawyers and that was it. They went on to actually get involved with some other big trials and do quite a bit. And they're pretty decent sized media figures.
I didn't know about the Chicago torture. I listened to your interview that you did with them the other day when I was like preparing for this mentally and like trying to figure out like whether we were gonna like record something or what I mean, like mentally just being like like what would I really have to say about it if we kind of recorded something.
And sidebar, I'll pass you guys that information if you want to try to talk to them if you think it'd be if you want to.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, just the story of just what they were both like. Was it they just out of like law school?
Yeah, like just out of law school.
Yeah, just like two radical like white dudes just out of law school who said, hell with it, we'll do this. We're down. We'll get targeted by the feds and the cops and everybody to just go do this. Yeah.
But you know why, Jeremy? Because they could. As we're getting ready, we're done. We're off air. I look at Flint Taylor, and we're talking. He was really thankful, really actually cool ass dude. And you know, keep in mind these guys are older. And he goes, I said, you know, you couldn't do this now, and you guys might be the last of a certain breed that can get out of law school and literally go practice what you feel.
Yeah.
Because you're not burdened by debt. And he just looked at me, man, but no bullshit. He looks at me, he goes, you're right.
He's a good friend of Cornell West, and Cornell West did a really, really good interview with him like a year ago, I think. I was listening to that as well.
We're going to hear about the show too. But
word up.
Yeah.
Well, you wrote that letter together, so you know.
Yeah.
Y'all are
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. Right now, me and my buddy Cornell West, and there's other 37 people that I'll.
Calls you brother Ben.
Well, I did. There is a. So I remember there was a clip from last year of some event in South Carolina, where Cornell West, during the primary campaign, he was doing, he was doing what he does, like everything Cornell West says sounds so intense, and he was doing his thing, and he was singing Bernie's praises, and like he worked his way up to, this magnificent vanilla brother Bernie Sanders. and I remember I was on TMBS in studio, and we were talking about that before we went on, and I told Michael that it's like just once before I die, I want Cornell West to call me that magnificent vanilla brother Ben Burgess.
I did the TMBS. I did the TMBS panel. I was just in the background doing it, like helping record with Leisha, and he at the end of it, like I kind of popped back up, and he was like, "Brother Forrest," and you can hear him say it like that. And then I was like, oh, like I wish I had gotten like a for that. And later that day he tweets and he's like, thank you to Sister Leisha and Brother Russell and he's like, and Brother Forrester. And I was like, well, I'm changing.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Forrester now. Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, again, everything he says sounds so compelling because he's saying it. Like he had when he was on Joe Rogan, there was a whole thing where they started talking about Anton Chekhov. He's like, Joe, have you read the short stories of Anton Chekhov? It's like, no. It's like, you haven't lived until you've read the short stories of Anton Chekhov. I was like, oh shit, I need to go home and read some Chekhov. But on the point about the lawyers, I mean, I think that this is a like the trial of the Chicago 7 was brought up earlier, and for anybody who's seen that movie.
How the fuck do you turn that into a courtroom drama and like assume that the court is like the most compelling part of that story?
Side note, they didn't like that movie.
Well,
very, very easily if you're Aaron Sorkin, yes.
Well, this is the other thing too, because you're missing the best parts of the courtroom drama, because the portrayal of William Kunstler in that movie is an abomination. Like they just made him like a lib, and this goes to Jason's point, about the sort of breed of lawyer that you had at the time, because in like the late 60s, early 70s, there was a whole type of radical lawyer that like I think you just don't have an equivalent of now. The guy who was like Dr. Gonzo in Fear and Loathing Las Vegas, like the actual guy, was like kind of got his start as like being like one of those kinds of lawyers, before he was hanging out, doing drugs with Hunter S. Thompson.
Real quick point. Although I think the closest thing we do have, shouts out to comrades in the National Lawyers Guild, the NLG, which I believe God damn it, I can't remember when they were founded, but they really were kind of like this, at least relatively radical segment of like much more like pro-union, pro-activist lawyers that are still out there, and even out folks. They're in the the people you see at demos in the bright green hats are NLG legal advisors. So more power to them.
Yeah,
I mean, some of that, the the civil rights movement being successful, and like law groups like the ACLU and stuff, kind of becoming like these liberal institutions. Like it kind of overshadows, I guess, the more like the radical. I guess the radical, because I mean, there's losses and there's wins, right? Like there's the Chicago 7 story isn't necessarily like some kind of big win for radicalism, you know what I mean? But like bigger things like some of the civil rights trials are, and then you kind of get these like this like codifying of this I guess this like liberal institutionism of a lot of the more left-leaning lawyer.
I'm sorry, go ahead. And I think that's the distinction, because like I think people like Kunstler in his prime, or some of these other examples, weren't. I think at that moment in history, they weren't really settled into the idea, okay, I'm going to be doing this for decades and decades, and this is how I'm doing this, and these are the kind of compromises I'm going to make with the, like being realistic about how to do it. It was a much more fraught moment, and they were much more willing to just do kind of like stunts in the courtroom, which again is the kind of thing, if you actually want to make the trial of Chicago 7 a courtroom drama, like at least use the real material. It's this was just Aaron Sorkin translated into something that made sense to him, which is not nearly as interesting or compelling. But in this movie, they weren't even. I think that is a flaw, that they left out all of the they left out the
Hey. He wants to say good night.
Hey.
Oh,
good night.
Night. Say night.
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 Okay.
They left out the lawyers, they left out the courtroom stuff, and that really does leave stuff on the table that would be good for drama. So I'll give you that. I'll give you the Vietnam. Should have been bigger, and I'll give you the it would have been like just purely. In Hollywood terms, like just as a drama, it would have been better if they'd cast somebody who was actually the age that Fred Hampton was.
But who? That's the thing.
Yeah,
we had this conversation, and we kind of ended it like with shoulders shrugged, going, who is going to play that role and have that level of charisma? We can look at it as some sort of critique of the film, or we can be like, okay, there's the movie, and here's real life.
Oh no!
I'm going to use this movie to explain to you real life.
Did you watch the Wu-Tang TV show?
Yes.
I mean, they got some pretty young guys in there.
One of those guys is in this.
Oh,
the guy Jimmy, the guy that gets killed, Jimmy.
Okay.
Is in? I think he's one of the Wu-Tang guys in the Wu-Tang thing. Yeah. I believe he plays RZA's character.
I actually think that there's a similar through line between Trial of Chicago 7, a similar flaw between that and this movie, which is that, and much more so in Chicago 7, Aaron Sorkin kind of wants to define radical politics in terms of, you're either, trying to win elections, and that's like one form of radical politics, like voting, winning elections. And there's the Abby Hoffman kind, which is like these political stunts, trying to raise money for different things, like levitating the Pentagon. And he kind of puts those things at odds with each other, like you're either this kind of radical or that kind of radical. Like they have that confrontation where he's like, you want to make real progressive change, like I actually win elections, and then Abby Hoffman is like, well, you think I don't have the money for that? Like, we're trying to raise money, we're trying to raise awareness. So he kind of sees those two things as
although at the end of the movie, the incredibly stupid synthesis is that the point of the Abby Hoffman stuff is like ultimately it's just a stunt for the sake of like get out the vote efforts. Like they like at the end of the movie, they turn Abby Hoffman into just this like bathwater liberal Democrat.
Yeah. So going further, I guess with my through line into the two things, they kind of set Fred Hampton up, and they never really decide on what he is, but there's like a liberal conception of the Black Panthers in general, which is like either really skilled community organizers doing things like building hospitals and kind of making like feeding people breakfast, or like not
kill Whitey.
Yeah, like either that or like gun toting like street guerrilla, and it never quite reconciles those two visions.
Well, okay, but I mean, devil's advocate, like some of that's because of the contradictions in the actual original group, right? I mean, like they, I think to some extent, I mean, not that I wouldn't say liberal community organizers, but I mean, like they actually did do all of those things.
Mm-hmm. I'm not saying any of it's wrong. I'm just saying they seem to lean really far in one direction with like shots of the Panthers marching in formation, like, you know what I mean, like kind of almost like ominous shots. Or he's like I gotta feed everybody and give them breakfast, and it's kind of like these things are. I'm not saying that they're both true, like.
But it's a Hollywood film, though, right? We have to keep in mind. But Pascal calls it the Great Awakening, right? He was talking about the Great Awakening, and there's been like this back and forth he's been having with Adolf Reed. Not an argument at all, just a conversation.
You said Adolf for a second, and I was like, "Whoa!" Like,
yeah, no, not Adolf, but Adolf Reed. And you know, we all, Teray and Cedric and I, all have this thing about the Great Awakening, and I think this movie kind of sits in a certain lane in the Great Awakening as we come off an era, a COVID era of George Floyd protests, and as you know, I'm gonna keep quoting Brother Pascal, is black politics the politics of containment, and we kind of point to this movie and go, yeah, kind of, sorta, because go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask if you wanted to explicate that a little bit, what that means. Black politics is the politics of containment.
I mean, it's kind of been a question we've been asking for the last few weeks on the show, and even in our own personal conversations. That some of these figures that come out, and even movies like this, the first thing Pascal said to me after we watched it, he goes, "Does this movie make you want to start an organization like the Black Panthers?" I was like, "No, not at all." It doesn't make me want to do anything revolution. It doesn't make me want to go pick up the Communist Manifesto. It doesn't make me want to try to find out who Marx or Lenin is. It doesn't make me want to do any of that.
Does it make you want to vote?
No, you know what it makes me want to do? It makes me want to buy a t-shirt that has some ill-ass slogan on it, and it makes me want to be mad at the police, because that's ultimately what a lot of these politics are about when we talk about BLM. I'm mad at the police, but I don't really know what I want to do about it, and I'm going to have a slogan like defund the police that sounds good, but what is it really about? And I'm not saying I want more cops. I'm not saying I want police officers to always show up at mental health episodes, but from someone that actually worked in an environment with several mental health episodes and had to deal with the police or not deal with the police. Defund the police doesn't understand that if you're not trying to change people's material conditions, what are you really going to have once you defund the police?
Right.
Yeah. Here we are in Oakland, California, where there was a big push, or here I am, Oakland, have a big push to defund the police. And some of the people that were behind the movement are like, well, please don't fire any cops because crime is up and these motherfuckers is shooting. So when you're not trying to change people's material conditions, when you're not trying to change the way society truly looks at things like poverty, mental health, then you can defund all you want, but you're going to have a series of other new problems that you're not looking at. Like, okay, where do these counselors come from?
Right.
Yeah.
A private company? Is there any government oversight? Have you guys spent 5 fucking minutes inside of a facility that's some sort of nonprofit that hires people? In the great words of Donald Trump, you're not getting their best.
Yeah, it's
so
at this point of the conversation, that's kind of why we need either Derek Varn or Miriam Kaba, or probably both of them here to help elucidate that.
But I mean, you feel me on that? So when we have these discussions, this movie makes you really angry because you're seeing police shoot people, you're seeing Fred Hampton say some right on motherfucker speeches, but at the end of the day, what are you finna get up and go do? What is, just like Malcolm X did? What the fuck did that movie make me go do other than buy a dope ass hat with an X on it with my lunch money?
I mean, there's also this like interesting.
Hold on, Jason. Do you actually have one of those?
Not anymore. It might be at my mama house somewhere.
Oh no, but you did have one of those.
Hell yeah, I had an X hat. I'm from Richmond, California, Ben.
All right, from 1990, 1991, I lived in the suburbs of Flint, and you saw that shit everywhere. Hell yeah.
I was in deep southern Texas, when that came out, and people have that.
Similar in terms of Jason, what you're saying in terms of like, what does this film make you want to go do? Let's connect to another recent, very recent film about cops and everything. The end of BlackkKlansman, where with that Spike Lee deliberately ends on showing footage of from Charlottesville, Charlottesville, August 2017, and you just gotta see this. Like he just ends on this like kind of like what, just like this discolored, desaturated American flag, and it's like, okay, well, that's what are you gonna do with that? It's like, no, it's like, how come? Why didn't you show like 3 down arrows at least, or it's sort of like
Spike Lee is not known for like
Spike Lee is the politics of containment.
Yeah,
Spike Lee's not known for radical solutions or like what I mean, like do the right thing. Like
although I will say BlackkKlansman does end on an ambiguous note, because before they do that montage that Jeremy's talking about, the last scene of BlackkKlansman, the cop, the undercover cop and his girlfriend are arguing about whether the police are reformable, and then like there's a noise at the door and they kind of stop their argument and like grab their guns and go to the door, and then it sort of does freeze frame and goes to that montage. So I think, even I will say, I mean, without defending the politics of Spike Lee, that I don't think he could bring himself to end that movie on a unambiguously pro, yes, the police are reformable position.
Yeah. Oh, also, I will say this. Shouts out to star of BlackkKlansman, John David Washington, as he is an excellent Bond, Christopher Nolan Bond villain in Tenet. If you didn't get a chance to see that yet,
I haven't seen Tenet. I've heard good things about it.
It's Christopher Nolan doing Bond, and John David Washington is an excellent, like full on, like sleek suited agent doing Bond shit. There's a goddamn catamaran race in the middle of this like time travel weird film. Anyway, sorry for the digression.
Can he beat out LaKeith Stanfield for best actor? Because right now LaKeith Stanfield literally pulled Sean. What's that movie? Tropic Thunder. Never go full. Blah blah blah. I'm not gonna say. Yeah, he went full snitch.
Yeah,
he went full snitch.
I guess
I was just going to ask, isn't that Denzel's kid you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, the one that played football? Yeah, the one that played football.
Did he play football?
Yeah, he played NFL football, yeah.
Probably, yeah. Born in 84.
Yeah.
Fuck, he's 8 years younger than me. God damn it.
Gotta get your life right.
I guess
or have a dad like Denzel.
The full snitch Oscar performance thing kind of is a perfect segue into, I guess, a criticism that I have of it, which is that focusing so much on that, like you say, Jason, like the humanity, I guess, that they're creating for this snitch, kind of they kind of push to the side everything with the Rainbow Coalition. They push to the side everything, like you see like the Young Lords for 5 seconds. You see the
Young Patriots for 5 seconds.
Yeah. Like the Young Patriots are just some guys standing in front of a Confederate flag, and then they're standing in front of it for a second, and then they challenge him on the Confederate flag, and he's like, "Well, we're Southern," and then that's all you know about them.
Yeah, and that's it. That's the end of the story.
Yeah. Some of them weren't even Southern, Appalachian. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, that is a whole different conversation. I look at it like this, man. If you've ever known someone that got in any sort of trouble, that everybody snitches. Everybody snitches, and people feel very comfortable doing that shit.
Yeah,
people feel very comfortable doing mafia movies and hood gangster movies have made people think that there's this fucking code of the streets that says that people are fucking quiet. Bull shit. The prison is filled with motherfuckers that got told on.
I have so in Ulster County, which is kind of funny that you asked the first time. I think that you came on GTAA when I said I was in upstate New York. You asked, is it near Kingston? Which headquartered in Kingston is this thing called Urgent, which is the Ulster Regional Gang Enforcement Narcotics Team or whatever, which we originally, like, our last sheriff was like commended by Trump for his. So what they do is they find low-level either addicts or low-level drug dealers, and they put them as fast as they can while they're in jail. But for like these low-level drug offenses, and they try to get up the chain as fast as possible. And then they raid whatever place it is, and they just keep raiding places. So, you know, around here, it's like, you know, people are always talking about gangster movies and stuff, but like they made a very successful and concerted effort to like turn like all these fucking high school and college kids into literal like
it's
county sheriff.
Not hard, bruh. I'm telling you, coming from an environment of criminal activity, if they see you as any sort of authority figure, snitching gets you privileges. Hey, guess what? So-and-so over there is dealing dope to so-and-so over here, or this dude over here beat up homeboy and took his blah, blah, blah. So because I gave you that information, what can I get? And I'm not talking about I can give you money. Maybe I can give you extra soap. So people tell, and to think that this dude was having some sort of crisis of conscience is foolish. To think that this motherfucker wasn't cracked out. He wasn't sweating in that last interview in real life because them lights was hot. He had the Marion Barry crack sweats.
Yeah. That, and it's one of the, I think, has been mentioned by many people over the years, Derek Varnby, one of them, but also that because the Panthers were trying to organize like active members, that left the door open to allowing either narcs or people who narcs had leverage over, into critical positions, and we kind of we saw the ramifications of that, I guess.
Well, we talked to Eddie Conway, and I don't know if you guys know Eddie Conway. He was a Panther in, I want to say, Maryland, and he went down for like 40 years. He was locked inside for 40 years, and we interviewed. He's showing the real news now called Rattling the Bar. We interviewed Eddie Conway soon after we saw this film, and we talked to him, and we asked him that question about being infiltrated, and he was like, "Look, man, shit was busy. He had time to vet nobody."
Yeah.
No, really.
I mean, there is
some ways. I mean, like if you're building coalitions with people that fat, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like coalitions with everybody you can.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that I think that I think that the magic formula for having a revolutionary organization that isn't full of informers has never been invented. We
haven't quite solved that. We haven't quite cracked that nut yet.
Yep.
Like they all are like the Bolshevik Party, like the Okhrana, the Tsarist secret police. I think there were half of the most active, like core members, were working for the secret police, the obviously the Black Panthers, the Communist Party USA, like there's a great, if you read Jessica Mitford's memoir, The Final Conflict, she has a great line in there about how being shocked when they did the HUAC hearings, House Un-American Activities Committee, that the people who were the most intense, sort of badgering everybody to go to meetings and pay their dues, all turned out
biggest snitches.
all turned out to be informers.
Everybody tells, man, and it's one of those things. I have a friend of mine that's a prison guard, and he said, "Hey, man, he's been informed for a minute." He goes, "I've seen 5 motherfuckers in my life not tell."
Jesus. It's true. Yeah, that's real.
And again, so when if you're kind of if your life of understanding, if your understanding of this comes from not being in the life, and you really think that there's this magical code of the streets and people go to fucking jail for somebody else, Forrest, I like you. I think you're a good dude. I ain't serving a day inside for your ass. I ain't holding no guns for you. I ain't holding no dope for you.
Pop culture
there's incredible. I mean, on some level, there's in real life, there's the naivety, the naive thought, I think, on the part of the Black Panther leadership in some places, that if they follow the laws, technically, you know what I mean? So they're not a gang. They're not, I mean, later on, they have some of the leadership has trouble with drugs, and they touch up against that, but maybe that's FBI, disinformation.
No, Huey Newton died buying dope.
Yeah, but I mean, like so there's kind of this thought that like, you know, like which is why they're like kind of comfortable open carrying in California, like when like during the Reagan, yeah. So like there's this kind of thought like, well, we have law books, we understand the law, and maybe they're not going to necessarily infiltrate us to the level that they actually ultimately were able to. So there's like the added chaos and like, you know, like being a little bit naive about how far the government would go, which is understandable because until you hear the story of, you know, Fred Hampton, like in some ways, like it's a literal assassination. Like,
yeah, right.
Bunchy Carter too. Bunchy Carter as well in L.A. You know, when you hear that story, which is very similar, I think Forrest, you and I were going back and forth when you see the thing about the Crowns gang and the fake news. The same thing happened in Southern California with Bunchy Carter, and that's what kind of and John Huggins that led to those guys getting killed. So we just don't understand at this point the level of infiltration that the government is going to pull when you're a Panther.
Yeah,
and Afeni Shakur talks about it in her trial as the Panther 21.
And honestly, like again, I mean, I'll even see like people in like DSA or whatever who are like obsessed with like secure communications and things like that. Guys, give it up, right? Yeah. It's not. You're not gonna like even underground organizations are always infiltrated. You can't do mass politics and like live in fear of some people being cops. Some people will be cops. The better thing to focus on is not letting people who are cops do what they do, which I will say was accurately portrayed in this movie, the C4 scene. You know, which you know, generally speaking, the person making the most insane suggestions about, you know, the illegal things that they think that you should be doing in a meeting, like that person is the cop.
Yeah, I think. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Jeremy. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Just two real quick points. One, that's that was the thing of like how COINTELPRO worked, is that it wasn't that they were like, well, some of the stuff they would actively instigate, but it's like it wasn't necessarily like them instigating it, but it's more like they would encourage like shall we say naturally occurring leftist tendencies, some of those to flourish. It's kind of a thing where they didn't need to you know, amp shit up so much as like remove some of the some of the people who were like, yeah, let's hold off on that. I mean, Lenin himself had to like hold off on telling people like, no, let's hold things off a little bit, just, you know, at this moment. If you remove those people and just let these, you know, kind of like the much more like ultra lefty tendencies come to the fore, you know, people will fight and self-destruct and all sorts of stuff.
Well, that's the thing about the Taoist group.
The other thing, real quick, just a point, about like in terms of like infiltration and with even like white affiliated groups. Again, I lived in Ann Arbor for 10 years, which I believe was the home and/or headquarters of the White Panthers, where they
that's what I thought.
And like members in
MC5.
Yeah, the MC5 are all like members of that, and in fact, the house they lived in and operate their HQ for all this stuff. It was turned into a co-op house that my buddy and at one point college radio station director lived in back then when they were shooting the MC5 documentary. They knew there are several interviews talking about how they knew that they were being wiretapped because they stopped paying the phone bill, and the feds paid the phone bill because if they didn't, they'd have nothing to wiretap. That's how this stuff works.
It's in like when you listen to there's a new Adam Curtis docuseries that I'm on the fence about, and there's a part of it where he actually gave a lot of care to his portrayal of Afeni Shakur, Tupac Shakur's mom, who was part of the Panther 21, and he actually has some court transcripts of what she said in her cross-examination of the snitch when she asked like, what did you think of what we were doing? And the guy goes, I thought what we were doing was beautiful. She goes, did you misrepresent what we were doing to the authorities? And he was like, yes. And she goes, well, didn't we not have any of these plans? This was all your planning? And he's like, yeah. And she goes, didn't you get the C4 from another informant? Like, you know, for government informant. And the guy says, yeah, you know, of course she got acquitted. But it's insane to think that, like to your point, Jeremy, that these guys were like, yeah, C4 is all we need, and then we can have a revolution. Like, they weren't thinking like that. And when you see that interview of Fred Hampton, it's easy to find on YouTube, talking about SDS, and he talks about their customistic tendencies. The main thing he keeps going back to is, we don't want to get people hurt because the government has weaponry we don't have.
Right. Yeah. It's again, it's kind of, it's the thing of like how even back, well, between back, I was on a group participation chat, or maybe it was probably some like reading group meeting. We talked about what does revolution look like now, and like I think somebody brought up that, like, Christopher Lasch even wrote about how every post-war revolutionary never fully realized that like any sort of like armed revolutionary vanguard can't exist in a nuclear armed state. It's like, this shit doesn't work. They got nukes, we don't. So we got to do, whatever we got to do, it has to go through other patterns.
And they clearly won't hesitate to nuke like a city, like, you know what I mean? Like, if you got to the point where you took like, even if it's a city in your own, like where, like, I think the Fred Hampton story shows that like incredibly, like they're not, like, our government's not afraid to assassinate somebody. Our government's not afraid to get everybody killed in the process of something. Like, there are so many different kinds of police departments is like another big part of this, I think. Like they don't know, like, I don't know, for the longest time, until they found the evidence of like the FBI involvement, like they thought it was like Chicago police department and the Illinois like Attorney General's office,
who isn't represented in the film.
Hanrahan
isn't mentioned once.
And in every other documentary about Fred Hampton, he's all over it.
Fred Hampton hates Hanrahan. Every speech he tells, and Hanrahan and Tricky Dicky Nixon
name checked all the goddamn time,
the time.
But so it's like, it's and every single one of those police departments at this point in time is militarized. Like, like if the city police doesn't get you, if the state police doesn't get you, the feds will get you. The military, at some point, the National Guard comes in. They're far more fucking militarized than any other,
Yeah, I mean, I will, and some of that, like, police militarization, really got its start in the era that we're seeing in this movie. In fact, in response to the Black Panthers,
Gates era, yeah,
exactly. Although Gates, actually, if you read
City of Quartz.
Yeah, I mean, he's all over that book. But I was thinking
another book recommendation you all need to like go buy now.
Yeah, and do check out the interview from the last Patreon episode with Mikey Utrecht about his Mike Davis essay in the Nation. But I was going to say, if you read that book, Rise of the Warrior Cop by
Radley Balco.
He actually, Daryl Gates of all people, right? Like just, repugnant piece of shit, and the guy who really pioneered, SWAT teams. Even he, when they were like there was a thing with the there was like a shootout with Panthers in Los Angeles, and somebody wanted to use the SWAT team for that, and even he at that point was like, yeah, this seems like too far, right? Like I don't want this like militarized stuff being used, for something like this. Although of course later on, when they started to be used all the time for just completely petty. Like petty crimes, he didn't have a problem with it. But I've
had a SWAT team come in and point a gun at me.
I've had a SWAT team point a gun at me.
I have not. However, I live in Portland, and over the last year, we have had interesting interactions with feds here. So that's all I'm going to say.
I was in right outside of St. George, Utah, with a flat tire.
Where is it? Where in you? How far from anywhere? Is that north or south of Salt Lake?
We were driving to Vegas, and I couldn't tell you where we were coming from because I don't remember off the top of my head. I just remember Vegas, and then we had a flat tire, and we were pulled over, and then AAA said, would you like a police escort to wait with you since you're on the side of a road in the middle of nowhere? We're like, oh no, we're fine.
No, thank you.
And so we were in the van, and I was playing on the phone. I was about to take a picture of the flat tire for social media, because that's what you do when you're touring, right? You take a picture of your fucking life.
Yeah.
And so as I get ready to go outside, I look up, and a dude has a gun on my now ex. She's on the ground, and they have an assault rifle pointed at me, and they're behind the car, like in the movies. And I come out with your hands up, and I threw the phone down because I was like, I'm not about to die over a phone. And then the sheriff comes running down the highway in front of the guns in front of me, and he's like, no, don't shoot, it's the wrong guy. And so he gets up to me, and he grabs me, he goes, I am so sorry. And I'm like in shock, right? My eyes are all big. He goes, I'm so sorry. We got a report that there was a custodial kidnapping with a white van with California plates, but that man was white and you were not. He said that, but no one would put their gun down.
Yeah, that's like the freak out up in Forks or wherever it was, like north of here, during when they thought like just the van full of like a multiracial couple was like Antifa being bussed in.
Yeah. Wasn't Joe Rogan talking about that?
Yeah.
Among other things. Does anybody just real quick about?
I didn't get to tell my SWAT team story.
Real quick. Does anybody remember that like they put out an episode? This is more of a Gen Xer thing in the crowd. Does anybody remember how they put out a Police Quest game? It was like Police Quest 4 SWAT that like the post LA, after.
Yeah. They had the original guy who like the original people that came up with the SWAT team giving like notes on how to make it a more accurate game, right?
Yeah, and Gates was like the big name they put that Ken Williams, one of the couple that owned Sierra Online, was a big like Southern California suburbanite, a cop supporter. The reason why the Police Quest games were a thing. You're like, oh hey, it's 2 years after the LA riots, the LA uprising. Let's have and Daryl Gates is no longer has a job. Let's bring him in and have him do a video game for us.
It's kind of disgusting.
Yeah, well, at least it's not as bad as the Nintendo game I had called Narc, where
arcade game.
You actually play the SWAT team raiding the you got to not shoot the hostages, and then you got to rappel down and break in there and clear the rooms. It was I love that game.
I was just gonna say on Jason's on Jason's story about the mistaken identity thing. I've never I've never had a SWAT team point a gun at me, but I have there was a time many years ago, 2004, when I was arrested after I'd for a extremely minor act of property destruction in the context of an anti-war protest. I'd took a Marine recruitment poster off the wall.
Get arrested for that?
Yeah.
I could top that.
And I had, but this is the thing, right? So there was it was like a minor enough thing that they actually sent me a letter saying there was like a warrant out for my arrest, for it later. And so I was like, all right, you have to till such and such time turn yourself in. So I did, and I had I went to the police station, whole thing, and then they booked me, and as they were booking me, I think I was still handcuffed at that point. I was like, so when do you think I'll be able to make bail? And they were like, oh, a few weeks. I was like, a few weeks? Really?
And that's when being told on everybody.
Everybody.
Look, we're going to need you to go into a Black Panthers headquarters.
I don't even think I can. Look at me. I don't think I can even infiltrate the Young Patriots. Never mind the Panthers.
This would have been anyone need a lawyer?
But
you can trust me. I'm Jewish.
But they had it's a few weeks, and then there was another cop who wasn't the one who was there, was looking over, it was doesn't that seem a little steep for a, like a 90-day misdemeanor? And then they realized that they'd pulled the wrong file. And it was, and like whatever, this other guy, I won't say his last name on YouTube, but his first name was Bill. And I guess it sounded vaguely like my name.
It was Bill Maher.
Wild Bill, yeah.
That fucking asshole.
Whatever Bill Maher did was way worse than what I did. Like, as soon as they figured out who I actually was, they were like, "Oh yeah, whatever, you can get out this afternoon."
Well, so on the point of like how easily they call SWAT teams at this point, like a couple of years ago, I had this friend that kept throwing house parties like on the outskirts of Newburgh, which Newburgh is like.
I know exactly where Newburgh is.
Yeah, it's like
I've hung out in Newburgh. Yeah,
it's deindustrialized, like
hella.
Yeah. So, but like this is like in the nicer suburban outskirts of it,
kind of near New Windsor.
The other way
okay.
Towards like Waukegan. But like so. My friend kept throwing these parties and his house was really dirty and like I don't know, like they sold like a little bit of weed out of there and stuff, but like nothing like insane. And so the neighbors kept complaining because he was having these parties and they would just like make up like, oh, there must be this going on, there must be that going on, like giving all these like whatever. They ended up spending $30,000 calling in a SWAT team. They threw the fucking flash grenades on the porch. Everybody was like, I was just sitting in there with like two people watching a movie, and a flash grenade went off. And like suddenly there was like I don't know, like 15 cops, 10 cops in there pointing guns at everybody. There's like 12 people there because like a bunch of people lived there, and they didn't find anything. And then they were like, I was like just kind of there, so they're like, hey, like I think we're just gonna let you like figure out like a way to get home or something. And then the guy's like, no, we spent too much money. Like, come on, take them all in. Let's charge all of them and see what we can get. And nobody, like, they had to drop all the charges. They dropped them down to like a disorderly or something like that, which they didn't find anything even to have that. But like, it's just, and then of course they put the thing in the paper, like we've arrested like 12 people at the house, like made it seem like this whole overblown thing. Never bothered to say, oh, we dropped the charges on everybody, but like, one person, and we charged that person for having a little weed in their room. Like,
remember that rock movie that came out a few years ago where it was called, I think it's called Snitch, and it's about how his son, got caught up in a drug deal. His son, his friends with someone, and his friend's like, hey man, I'm gonna mail you a package because his friend got caught selling weed. You know how it goes. Hey man, you got caught. You're gonna go to jail for 5 minutes. And they go, oh no, I can't go to jail for 5 minutes. I know a kingpin. And then they give somebody up. And they gave up the Rock's son, and there's this huge sting operation, and the Rock has to free his son, so he infiltrates a drug thing. You haven't seen that?
No, I am reminded of. Do you remember? I think Andrew and Jason, I think you're the only other two Gen Xers here. Do you remember Tank? Fred, not Frank. Is it Frank Gardner? Who's the guy who played the movie about the dad who owned a World War II German tank and who used it to free early 80s film.
It's sounding hella familiar.
Because it was on basic cable all the time for like.
It's sounding hella familiar right now.
Co-starring Shirley Jones from the Partridge Family as his wife.
I gotta look it up. Did it come out around the same time as Turk 182?
Yes. About that, definitely. That's the films that would be on TBS all the time. But it was about like this dad who owned a World War II Sherman tank who uses it to rescue his son, who was like kind of like I think illegitimately framed for like a possession charge and sent to some southern work camp, and uses this I think G.D. Spradlin is the
C. Thomas Howell is in it. G.D. Spradlin is in it. Yeah. G.D. Spradlin.
Southern sheriff in it, but
it sounds vaguely familiar. I don't remember watching it. I watched a lot of mediocre films in the 80s. I was the kid that could tell the time by whatever was on television.
Similar, yeah. Growing up, this thing. Yes. If you were your family had HBO.
Mm-hmm.
That was a definite lifestyle. We had a question in YouTube chat asking about if we knew if the Northern Illinois chapter of the BPP was somehow special or different from others. I don't think it was. I do know that at least the Portland chapter of the Panther Party lasted a little bit longer, because I know that up here in Portland they had both
no black people. I'm just teasing.
Oh, well, hang on. Back then, they had before the crash, they were it's not like the city wasn't actively trying to push them out, but in that area of Albina, which is a neighborhood in North Portland that was taken over by
Albina.
Yeah, there he goes. Tank. Yes, thank you. Where the Fred Hampton free breakfast clinic, the building used to stand, was knocked down by the city, and there's now a plaque in its memory. But there was also the Malcolm X free medical clinic, because there's a lot of folks who work together to I think doing free sickle cell testing and all sorts of stuff. At least the Portland efforts lasted until the early 80s. I think longer than both the Illinois and the Oakland chapters did.
Yeah, so I wonder if the Illinois chapter might have been, or at least the Chicago chapter might have been somewhat unique. I mean, obviously, a lot of the sorts of things that you were describing were happening everywhere, but like the Rainbow Coalition, I mean, that was like a local effort in Chicago.
Definitely.
Also, Chicago's was a big city at that point in time, right? So there's a lot going on in a big city in general. Mark Clark, the other guy that gets killed that night, actually, if you remember, Forrest, that episode, those lawyers actually keep talking about Mark. They always say, "Yeah, don't forget Mark Clark." Like they knew him. It wasn't like he's just a figure that showed up one day. The story that we were all talking on a chat, and Cedric Johnson had brought up the fact that he had interviewed someone a while back that was with the Chicago Panthers, and the only reason why William O'Neill was around was because he had a car, and they weren't as cool with him as the movie makes it out to be.
Oh, assumably they weren't. Like, I don't know. I kind of got that from the interviews that they did with him in that documentary.
Yeah, they weren't feeling homey at all. Like he had snitchy vibes.
Yeah.
There's
a little bit of that depicted in the film, but it kind of gets brushed aside.
With,
but
it's a better story if they did accept him more. And although and I think it's a better. And yeah, I think even in terms of like humanizing him, showing him as being conflicted, I mean, I guess I don't see that as big a flaw. I think that, first of all, like, who knows, right? I mean, lots of people, are incredibly conflicted about lots of shit that they still do. So although I do take Jason's point about how he should have been, he's too sober the whole time, But
that was the thing. They were trying to get drugs on Hampton, and Hampton apparently was like really clean. They couldn't even bust him with pot. He was like not a dope dude, man.
Well, the other crazy thing about I guess like the William O'Neill portrayal is that in that 1990 recut COINTELPRO documentary, which I think they were using the footage from the
the prize.
So a big part of it is he keeps saying throughout when he's telling the story of it, he's like he thinks of the FBI, like he's just an informant. He's not an FBI agent, but the mental gymnastics I guess he has to do to justify to himself that he helped commit this murder, this assassination, was he keeps saying like we did this, we infiltrated the Black Panther headquarters.
Because that's not the only thing that he did. I mean, again, this movie really puts him in a vacuum of just this incident, and you think that he goes off into the sunset. He is implicated in a drive-by murder of some people. He infiltrated several Panther cells. William O'Neill worked for the feds, got paid handsomely for working with the feds. And that's why it's so interesting to hear him talk at the Eyes on the Prize. And I remember watching Jeremy, we're around the same age. So I remember watching Eyes on the Prize, and you hear William O'Neill say, I'm not like these armchair activists. I fed those little Negroes. Wow. And I infiltrated their movement and brought it to its knees, but I still fed them on the way out. Like, if that was something that fucked with him because he actually thought about it, I don't think so. I think there's so many other contradictions that man lived that this was the last thing on his motherfucking mind.
He also said he was involved in the struggle.
Yeah,
right.
Or like the struggle against because he could be on either side of a struggle. Like he was involved in the struggle.
He was in the struggle. He was with the FBI pulling the other side of the road.
There's the struggle. Everybody's in the struggle. Not everybody's on the same side of the struggle. It's like I saw, I saw a Bhaskar tweet today. Every veteran of the post-in wars has some small part of them that hopes that Neera would make it. Like the same energy.
I think her posting skills are overhyped. No, because I've never seen. Because I'll give people like their game when you know what I mean, like when they're pushed. Like she just kind of seems like a bully. Like she doesn't seem particularly like she's not Trumpian. Neera Tanden.
Oh, Neera Tanden. Yeah,
she's not Trumpian. Like he was like his tweets are good. Whether like you can fucking hate him and still be like his like with Trump on it.
Neera Tanden seems like she wants to fight, like physically fight.
Yeah.
I see that.
Yeah, and she did. I mean, like she actually hit a staffer who asked Hillary an impertinent question. Like, she's definitely got that.
You don't want to see those hands. That's what I'm saying. Neera Tanden, Cori Bush is the fight. Like, if I was in Washington right now, I would be the snitch in Cori Bush's ear every day. Like, hey, Neera Tanden said you look like Jemima with a new perm. I mean, I would be talking so much shit to Cori Bush to get her to slap the fire out of Neera Tanden. Because after Cori Bush, hey, real talk, I'm not trying to be funny. I'm being hella serious. When Cori Bush gave that fucking little speech about the 6th, and she said with like tears coming out of her eyes, and if they would have came through my door, we would have been banging to the end. I was like, I got goosebumps just thinking about it right now. Like you knew she was gonna put the wood to somebody. So let's set it up. Cori Bush v. Neera Tanden, because Neera Tanden like to put hands on people. Cori Bush is not afraid to put hands on people. I'm trying to make it happen.
Well, think how unhinged you have to be Hillary Clinton's like enforcer, kind of. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Forrest, about we infiltrated the Panthers. I've got to say, I mean, as I'm sure it does for you, like I immediately, when you said that, I immediately thought of the Sopranos of
with pussy.
Not referring to the FBI as we, and in that case, I mean, in the show it was because he was like really fucked up by what he was doing, and like that was his way of processing it. I mean, I don't know if the actual informant in Chicago had any of those struggles or not. Maybe it didn't, but I mean, I think it makes sense as a dramatic choice. Mm-hmm. Like I could, I mean, I'm I can totally accept that makes them an interesting and ambiguous character. I think that having Roy Mitchell,
the Fed,
the Fed. Like it was a little less clear to me what they were trying to do with his character, because it
makes sense a lot more after Jason said the thing about how they weren't quite sure what they wanted to do with J. Edgar Hoover, because it makes a lot more sense that his character kind of by scene changes, because I would assume that through rewrites these scenes kind of evolved.
Because it did seem like between pointing out that he'd helped track down the guys who killed Sherman and Goodwin could be seen as just like a sort of cynical way of appealing to the informant, but in combination with the scenes where he seemed like a little uncomfortable about Hoover's level of racism, or he seemed a little uncomfortable with having the murderer FBI informant do his tour of Panther offices. It really made it seem like, they're trying to say, okay, he's a conservative, button-down guy, but like, he's kind of a good guy, and he's not down with all of this. But then by the end of the movie, that seemed to have just completely flipped. And
there's some level of delusion to it too, right? Like that character, like he has to swallow the same pill that the informant does. So he's a little bit hesitant about it, then J. Edgar Hoover himself is like, no, you're doing this. So he fucking swallows the pill. Then you know, the next guy, like William O'Neill, he's a little bit hesitant about doing it. He has to swallow the pill. You know what I mean? Like, and it goes down from there because, you know, he goes from kind of seeming hesitant to being like, no, you're doing this. Fuck you. You're the informant. Like, I tell you when you're off the hook.
And that's my problem with movies like this. And I'll stop making this point. My problem with movies like this is my problem with Mississippi Burning.
Oh.
I watched Mississippi Burning when it came out with everybody else, and you get so mad. And at some point, all these movies started coming out around that same era where they depict racism as some white person saying something so insane, like, I don't want these niggas in my pool. And that becomes what racism is. So if you don't say the N-word at Black N-words, then you're not racist.
Right.
Racism is only like interpersonal Arlie Ermy character related to, you know, the
right.
You know, Arlie Ermy character level of cartoonish, you know,
that's
fiction of like person on person yelling.
For so many people, that's what racism is, because you've seen it forced down your throat and you're like, look, man, you're not getting killed by the police anymore where there's a dirty sheriff in town and no one's calling you the N-word. Therefore, we live in a post-racial world. Right. And that's what this movie kind of does for me at the end of the day. That's why when Pascal asked me, goes, does this movie make you want to get up and, you know, do anything? And I was like, no, not really.
Well, both Adolph Reed and Toria Reed make that point all the time about, you know, like when they're talking about like what is systemic racism as a thing, like, is it a specter above all of us that kind of is so ingrained within our society that you can never get rid of it? And it's like this existential struggle that can't be fought with like material gains for people. Like, is racism just like a spectral concept that follows around a whole society, or is it, you know, the personal attitudes of some people? But then, you know, is there like material conditions that you can actually just improve for people, and then it doesn't really, like, not that it doesn't matter what people say to each other, but like at some point, like, people are not oppressed to that level anymore because their position in society.
If racism to you is Hulk Hogan using the N-word on a private conversation, then we should probably have a talk about racism, because what Hulk Hogan says in private with his kid has no material effects on anybody that I know.
Well, and of course, this is actually an interesting thing to bring it back to the Panthers, because this was very much their party line. Like, this is like, if you read like Bobby Seale Seize the Time, you know, he talks about this there. I think there are places where, you know, Hugh Newton talks about it, that they I mean, they would even put it like as, we're not really that concerned with racism, we're concerned with racial oppression. That you know, since everybody has their little prejudices, whatever, that's not important. The important thing is, you know, relations of power.
I've been reading a lot about post-war liberalism, and like, I think Daniel Bessner pointed out a couple great essays by Dorothy Root that I've been like checking into, and which talk about how after you know, in the 50s, you know, kind of, you know, during the Eisenhower era, like, you know, post New Deal, but also like, you know, after the Holocaust, a lot of like liberal intelligentsia was kind of like really getting into at some point, I think part of it was part of like how like you had like the level of like, you know, of like liberal professionalism coming to the thing of like people, you know, upper middle class people taking these positions of power, but also, you know, the entire, you know, the face of racism wasn't, you know, the whole point of civil rights was about like, you know, removing people being, you know, bigoted towards each other vocally, rather than a much more universal, again, you know, pre-war New Deal era thing of trying to like, you know, elevate everybody. And even like I think there are several histories written about this, about how a lot of the groups that were much more liberal groups that were even, you know, were about trying to reduce person-to-person bigotry were far less successful than the much more radical groups that were trying to, you know, just elevate everyone's circumstances. It's kind of a thing of like, you know, things have been written in the last year about how like union struggles make people a hell of a lot less racist in like a particular work.
Yeah. Jane McAlevey talks about that all the time, as like her union organizing, like the best way to organizing is the best way to fight racism, because people have to end up building coalitions with people that they wouldn't normally.
Yeah, right. I mean, so I always think of that movie Madawan. Okay, yeah, Jeremy's seen it.
Matewan, yeah, the scene. Just Google, well, rather go on YouTube, search Chris Cooper, Matewan speech, James Earl Jones. And there's an entire thing that's, you know, I think Chris Cooper even got an Oscar nomination. Like it was his very first film, and I think he got a nomination because of that scene and that speech.
Which is, by the way, definitely I mean, whatever. As you say, James Earl Jones is in it. I'm pretty sure that is a very mainstream studio movie, but one that manages to be very politically radical with no hiding behind allegory, nothing like that. Which I think does happen sometimes, especially in historical eras when nobody's really that worried about radical politics. And it's about the the Cold Wars in West Virginia. The main character is a wobbly, or like the main hero of the movie, and a lot of the movie is about that, and the ways that people being pragmatically forced to work together in order to win the strike leads to a diminishment of prejudice all around, because in the course of having to work together, then you start to identify with each other more, which honestly I think is a more historically accurate and realistic idea of how this stuff happens than what I think a lot of people in the contemporary left think, which is that like first you do the vision quest to rid everybody of their problematic attitudes, and then and only then can you actually unite and struggle.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the ironic thing about the HR politics too. Like, when it's like an HR focus on what makes people uncomfortable, that you can say like, don't say that anymore. Like you start at some level, like you start questioning things so deeply that you start seeing you see everybody almost as the other. You know what I mean? Like it's like, because I don't remember what this was an ad for, but like there was something that was like that popped up on my Twitter at one point that was like it was like videos of like how to talk to like black coworkers or something like that. Like it was something weird that's like, when you're talking to black coworkers, like here's some things to avoid. Like you start seeing you're no longer like interacting with a person. You're interacting with like you're just sitting there like freaking out about what should I say? You're like neurotic, you're neurotic and you're separated, you're alienated from everybody around you. Whereas in like a union situation where you're all fighting for the same goal, you start identifying with the people around you, no matter who they are, because suddenly you're all united in that goal.
Right. Also, Mate Wan, a great depiction of the kind of in I think the trans historical thing of what a lot of especially post academic folks do, of conflating white folks as this permanent historical thing that's always been there. It's no, it's if you watch Matewan, you realize that Italian folks, especially Italian immigrants, pre-war were not white. And it's a great depiction of how even back into the I think almost for the entire the history of immigration in America, how what was at one point was called white ethnics into as strike breakers.
Still calls them that.
What's that?
I think Chris Matthews still uses that phrase, but yeah,
but
does he really?
But you get even in Minnesota, you'd have Anglo and German Americans who were miners and shit. Then they would bring in the Swedes to break that up, and then later they would bring in Norwegians to break that up. And it's like one of the things that I would was talking about, again, the aforementioned Derek Vard about how so much white privilege talk doesn't understand the historical difference between WASP privilege versus white privilege, which if you're talking about, let's say, Jewish folks, and my own alma mater, the University of Michigan, called itself the Harvard of the West, because in the pre-war era, they would allow Jewish folks to attend, whereas Harvard not so positive at allowing those.
There's a movie about it where the guy lies and says he's Jewish. What was that movie with Matt Damon? It's a college. It's 90s.
It's
early 90s.
It's not Good Will Hunting, is it?
No, it's before Good Will Hunting. It's before Matt Damon is like Matt Damon. And he's playing this dude that's shitting on a Jewish guy, and I can't remember who the Jewish guy was.
Is it With Honors?
I think so.
Well, the other thing that the conversation about white privilege and white ethnics and all of that comes to mind is that the reason that like the white ethnic communities, like whether it's like Jews that are white or Italian Americans or Polish Americans, were kind of allowed into like the WASP style whiteness, like that place in like a racial conception, is because the civil rights movement started, and there was a lot of solidarity in some of these situations between Italians or Polish people or Jewish people and Black people. And the reason that that white was kind of conceived of as like this overall like European American like conception is that that they didn't like that so many of these like white ethnics that had been like that had lived in slums and had lived in ghettos when they first came here were now we're now like linking up, I guess, with the civil rights struggle and kind of seeing themselves in that.
Jason, to answer your question, the film is School Ties.
School Ties. School Ties.
In the 1950s, a star quarterback is given an opportunity to attend an elite preparatory school, but must conceal the fact that he is Jewish, starring Brendan Fraser.
Brendan Fraser was the Jew.
Written by, check this out, story and screenplay by Dick Wolf.
Dun, dun.
Oh, no shit.
Oh, yeah. IMDb is your friend. It's one of those like it's the one website for I don't know
with
5 years now that I check about every day for some reason.
I try not to check IMDb anymore because it takes the fun out of that conversation you have with your significant other. When you see a movie like that motherfucker was in that movie that we saw, like that's a fun conversation that I like to keep having.
I need to find out. I'm very much like a commentary track consumer. I need the trivia behind the film of what I'm seeing, and also the cast list to figure out like, okay, where have we seen this person before? Anyway. Also, we've been going for 100 minutes. How long do y'all feel like going?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. But so somebody said in the chat, and by the way, I know this. We've had a couple references to the chat, which might be confusing when people watch this on Tuesday. The
elite chat.
Yeah.
The
petite bourgeoisie.
Yeah, the chat of the labor aristocracy.
Oh, I don't know about the petite bourgeoisie, but the let's say
the hardcore give heads.
That could be the name.
The people who would pay attention to us
talking. To give them an argument nomenclature. No, it's so we were watching this with patrons in the Discord, and then we decided to switch over to StreamYard so that we could share this with YouTube. They gave the patrons the unlisted YouTube link. So anyway, just thought I'd say that because
7 people pushed all the way through to the
people get really annoyed when they're confused about whether something's live or premiere or whatever. So I just want to make that clear. But somebody in the chat referred back to earlier. Joshua says, yeah, what about Ben says it's revolutionary versus Jason counter-revolutionary? So I think Jason said counter-revolutionary. I don't know that I said
counter-revolutionary.
Yeah, I don't know that I said revolutionary. I did push back against counter-revolutionary. So let me see before we wrap up and everybody gives their final thoughts. Let me see if I can make that case. I think that I don't think it's a particularly revolutionary movie. I see the point about how, like, okay, what's anybody really going to take out of it besides, fuck the cops, I guess. Fair enough. But I can't really bring myself to say that the movie had, particularly, bad politics. I think that, yeah, I like what we were talking about a few minutes ago before we got off track. The like the Roy Mitchell stuff. I feel like, yeah, they didn't quite know what they wanted to do with the character. Maybe that was like a couple of drafts that were poorly put, like mashed together. But I think overall, I don't think the politics were bad. I think the politics just weren't the focus because, like Jason said at the beginning, this is like a, Hollywood gangster movie kind of thing.
This was a biopic.
Yeah, the focus was on the personal. The focus was on the
three people.
These three people and how their lives were intersected up until this dramatic moment. So the spotlight wasn't really on Hampton's politics. But that said, when you saw Hampton's politics, it all seemed to be about right. He's criticizing cultural nationalism. He's going to the Young Patriots meeting and and encouraging them to think about what they have in common with the experience of Black people in Chicago. He talks several times about capitalists and how it doesn't matter what color they are. So the Hampton politics were there and were pretty accurately portrayed. It's just that the distinction I make is that, I mean, yeah, I totally get what you mean. Like, you don't come out of this movie thinking, man, I really need to read up on this political views.
It's not agitprop.
Yeah, it's not agitprop. It's like a melodrama about these people. I mean, it's Judas and the Black Messiah. Mm-hmm. It's like a gangster movie about the experience of being in the orbit of this incredibly charismatic person and being a snitch. But that said, I mean, I don't really see a big political objection. It's just that's what the focus was. That would be my case.
I think to some, I mean, I think it was a good movie. I also think that, we're so desperate for good leftist representation in film that, I don't know. I'd like to see what a real socialist society creating film, like that kind of art would look like.
You're kind of seeing it with people like Boots Riley.
Yeah, I think that's the closest. And the American version is closest we're going to get for a while.
And I think to some extent, maybe Jordan Peele.
On the edge.
To some extent.
Yeah.
He's still kind of. I mean, Jordan Peele's still kind of obsessed with that representational side of things, though.
He's too libby for you.
I'm not saying he's too libby, but I'm saying, like, I don't know if I would call like Get Out like truly a revolutionary film. You know what I mean?
He was supposed to be part of Candyman, and I don't know if you've seen the movie Candyman.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, one of the issues that people have with Candyman.
You're talking about?
Say again?
The original you're talking about?
The original Candyman.
Yeah.
One of the issues that some people have with Candyman is, how are you going to be this black guy that gets murdered during slavery that comes back and fucks with brothers in the projects? Wouldn't you be up in the suburbs fucking with the white people that cut your hand off?
Right.
But you want to mess with people that look like you? That doesn't make any sense at all. And the joke was that, a white person definitely wrote this movie.
Yeah.
An English white person, no less. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's supposed to be redoing Candyman with a whole different take on that, and going to make it a little bit more, I don't want to say accurate, but just make a little more sense. So we'll see. I've only seen the trailer and it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
It is right now. It is according to IMDb, it is scheduled to be released 27th of August of this year. So.
All right.
I'll watch it. I'm gonna watch it.
I'll watch it. I mean, like, I think Get Out. I mean, I don't know, like the politics of the movie. I think were pretty. I mean, I don't know if I'd say libby, but I mean, like, I think pretty uncomplicated. Like, it was. I mean, it really seemed to be like racism is bad, and and white people who have like a weird, awkward fixation, with black people in ways that they think are anti-racist, are embarrassing. Like,
I'm not dating any white girls.
It's like, I mean, it's a good takedown of a certain kind of extremely paternalist white liberal sensibility.
I remember listening to you talking about on Chapo and I remember one of them said like it's hilarious that Bradley Whitford didn't realize that his character was just him.
Yeah,
that's fucked up.
Well, he did. He said he didn't understand. He said he didn't understand that that the line where he says I would have voted for Obama a third time. Like he didn't understand the comedy of it when he first when he read the script. So he was like kind of clueless about that. And then he posted that Parasite like meme that was like it was like Donald Trump hiding under the table, and it's like Donald Trump in the meme was the parasite. So it was like a completely wrong.
Oh, I gotta see that.
So Bradley Whitford just generally doesn't get movies.
He doesn't get
pretty funny.
He doesn't get a lot of things.
Yeah.
He was the bad guy in Revenge of the Nerds 2, right? Wasn't he the bad jock in Nerds 2?
I can't remember. Give me a second.
Dean Ulick.
He was in Adventures of Babysitting. I know that.
I believe he's the bad guy in Nerds 2.
Man, I remember that movie. I haven't turned that in a long time.
But you know, I don't know. Get Out for me, like watching Get Out with friends. I remember when the trailer hit, a bunch of friends like we hit each other up like, dude, have you seen the trailer for this movie? That shit's way too accurate. Like they're nail head, you know.
Yeah. Real quick. My two things. One, Tony Todd is listed in the credits for the new Candyman film.
Fuck yeah!
And it is
the original Candyman, Tony Todd.
Yeah,
that guy.
Starring Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, the guy who played, I think he played Black Manta in the Aquaman film. He's top credited in the Candyman remake, but also as for, you know, is this film, revolutionary or counter-revolutionary? I'd just say kind of model. Yeah, it's biopic, but you could, you know, if you're doing, say, like a night school, as the Panthers themselves did, you could probably use clips to help illustrate, to kind of like bring in new folks and kind of like, you know, illustrate like time and place and maybe a couple of different concepts. But you have to take it from there. So
I mean, it's really impossible to depict the Black Panthers accurately in general, I think, in film, like besides documentary, you know what I mean? Like it's just that, like, it's just the contradictions. You know, you got to heighten the contradictions, which, by the way, is a great name for a fucking podcast. If anyone ever, no, but like, so there's like so many, you know, like it's true that there's so many contradictions, and I think it's hard to portray that in film. And I don't really know. I mean, you know, is a studio film ever truly going to be revolutionary? Like, I don't think it can. Yeah.
No, I think the best example about this movie is, and I was like messaging Jason about this. The very first song played after the opening credits is I love the song, but it is Love Gone Bad by Chris Clark, and she is a white woman who was hired by who was signed by Motown to be their Dusty Springfield, and she put out this great single, and it really is a fantastic song, and Jackson 5 covered it for Motown too, but like that's the first thing you hear, and I think that is a great metaphor for this movie. That it's kind of dolled up as something revolutionary, but it really kind of isn't. It's really just this giant 6 foot tall white woman with blonde hair and a beehive haircut.
I'm kind of sticking with my original thing about separating the politics from the story of COINTELPRO. Yeah. Because I think it very accurately depicts COINTELPRO, and I think that's a story that needs to be told, because it's almost unbelievable when you hear like I agree. The FBI sending Martin Luther King, which obviously is not covered in this, but like they sent Martin Luther King that's like that letter that was like, you should kill yourself, like
because of him cheating on his wife.
Yeah, I mean,
the movie to me is the perfect movie for this kind of BLM generation of rhetoric. Like all you're going to get is a lot of posturing and no real critique of empire, and no real critique of class, and no real critique of capitalism. And in watching this movie, I think we've all kind of said it. It stays away from all those things that were what the Panthers were all about. And at the end of the day, the movie might as well have been called "Fuck the Police." It could have been called N-word shooting. It could have been called a fuckadashiki. It could have been called so many things, and I still would have saw it, and I was like, yeah. A Hollywood film by cats that are Hollywood cats that have a veneer of wokeness. And, you know, Forrest, we're talking about the interview with Shaka King.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot more interviews with these cats, and they're going to come off as the wokest motherfuckers in the room. And this movie to me is kind of the epitome of that vibe. I enjoyed what I saw. I'll watch it again. Just like I said, I'll watch Boys in the Hood every time it comes on TV and regular TV. I will watch New Jack City every time. I love New Jack City. And cry every time Chris Rock takes that last hit. Scotty, help me, I'm gonna die.
Which even Chris Rock referenced in CB4.
But you know, I understand the problematic nature of these films, and I understand the importance of being able to, you know, I as a parent, I understand the importance of when my 17-year-old son, you saw the 2-year-old, goes and watches this, me and that little motherfucker have to sit down and have a long talk. Because he's not going to really understand what he saw. He's not going to understand the Panthers. He's not going to understand their message, because all the messages is kind of reactionary.
Ironically, Shaka King kind of sounds like an informant in his Michael Moore interview, because like the way that he talks about like the making of the movie, he's talked to him and he's like, well, you wouldn't think that I would be able to make such a truly revolutionary picture in the studio system, but you know what? The studio system will give you all these resources to do it. And I just can't help but think of like, yo, you wouldn't think the FBI, like everyone says the FBI is bad, but like the FBI will like give you these resources if you know what I mean? Like it's that kind of like the studio system as propaganda tool.
I don't know the brother, so I'm not going to talk about him. I don't know him.
All I know is him. I'm just saying like it was just funny that phrase kind of like the way that he said that in my mind. I was like, it like clicked as like all right, like he's kind of shilling for the studio system being more woke, I guess.
He's gonna win some awards from this film. I think LaKeith Stanfield is gonna win a Best Actor award for this film because his portrayal is amazing. It's amazing, and again, I'll say it again. You are watching this man knowing that he's destroying his career, and he said it in interviews. He was terrified that this movie would mar him, and he gives a great performance of a man that's really conflicted with his own career. Is it worth it at the end of the, and that's why the performance is so good, because I think it comes from an honest place from LaKeith Stanfield.
Yeah, and as your co-host Pascal has said, it is a good movie, and that is why you should not trust it.
That is what he said.
Probably the thing. I think that's the big. I think that's the biggest takeaway we should take from this film is that yes, it is a good movie, it's a great film, and we should not trust it. Also, real quick, shout out to for those in the audience who don't know the name, his artwork was not featured. It was you could see it in a couple shots. It was not nearly as prominent as it should have been. Check out the artwork of Emory Douglas, who was the artist and minister of agitprop, I guess you could call him, for the Panthers, and would make like these full on like fold out centerfolds that people could put on the walls. Emory Douglas, like he's had a few art shows of his works because of his artwork would show up in the Black Panther newspaper. And also, if you haven't read it yet, again, from Haymarket, the Black Panther Speak, edited by Philip S. Foner. It is probably on sale for, I mean, it's a Haymarket
40% off.
Yeah, between 30 and 60%, depending on the week. It is worth your time.
All right. So, I mean, Jason already made this clear, but I want to at least, you know, I want to ask Jeremy, but at least the two people who work for GTAA on here, you guys would do hard time for me instead of informing.
I lived 10 years in outside Baltimore, and I gotta stay true to my Balmer friends there, because snitches get stitches.
And I got student loans I got to pay off. So,
all right, thanks, guys.
Oh shit! Peace out, y'all.
Yeah, night, y'all. Again, go back and watch the original documentaries. There actually was there's a great documentary made by, I think, was it Swedish filmmakers called The Assassination of Fred Hampton? I don't know, but there was a documentary made in like early 1970, 71 that covered a lot of the stuff.
Cool. Left is best.